everyone, my name is Lily and I'm the book reviewer behind Utopia State of Mind, and today I'm going to be talking about the book Erasure and the film American Fiction. So I was recommended this book. Actually, I was asked at a dinner party I went to about American Fiction, and I didn't know at all about it, except I remembered and I said, "Oh, isn't that the film based on a book?" And I only knew about that because I'd seen a tweet or like an article basically from R.F. Kuang talking about Erasure because Yellowface has similar themes. So I decided my next book to film adaptation project would be Erasure and American Fiction. And the basic plot of Erasure, which is why it was comped to Yellowface, is basically an author. He is told that he needs to like appeal to the masses and also appeal to the stereotypes of what the Black experience is in order to sell books. And he's kind of like, this is so ridiculous. Okay, I'll write this sort of parody, this piece where it's just like so unbelievably untrue, which ends up selling. And that brings into a whole kind of thing like, how long are you going to perpetuate this ruse? Are you going to keep going forever? What is this saying about the publishing industry, about people's tastes, about what we think of when we think of marginalized experiences? So that is the plot behind Erasure. And so right now I'm filming my film reactions, but post book reading, if it makes any sense. So I have a few thoughts about the books, and I'm going to go into kind of things I'm thinking about for the film, and then I'll film another section where I talk about how I felt after the film. So I just want to go through, first of all, my notes. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about Erasure is that the main character is really struggling to feel like he is Black enough, mostly because, we have all of these stereotypes or these things that we think of when we think of a certain experience, whether that be, friends who are also Black, or whether it be to kind of other people who are not Black, at least for him. And I also feel like I get this a lot for being Asian or not being Asian, specifically since I am a transracial adoptee. I have a lot of imposter syndrome about feeling Asian enough, having grown up not like stereotypically Asian. I have a lot of things where people who don't know that I'm adopted will kind of look at me and be like, "Oh yeah, don't you know about this thing?" And I'll be like, what? Or things where people will look to me to explain concepts to them, where I'm kind of like, I am just as lost as you are. So I totally, this theme really resonated with me. It really made an impact with me in the ways that I definitely understand this game, or this like feeling of not being enough, not being either, like being sort of phenotypically being judged by an appearance of having a certain experience that someone else thinks you have, whether that be that like I was, grew up with Asian parents or grew up with Chinese parents, or whether that be that I am like, you know what I mean, whatever experiences or expectations people have when they look at me, and having to play this like, okay, how do I perform myself to make a relationship with you, or like figure out what you're expecting from me and my experiences, and then how do I talk to you about them. It's always kind of like this give and take and this dance between kind of figuring out like, what do you think you know about me? What is wrong? What do I tell you? How do I tell you this? How do I make my experiences make sense to you? And so that really resonated with me. But I think as well, I'd heard about this publishing story and this idea of like publishing, and specifically society, only wanting certain visions of a marginalized experience. And for a lot of ones that are steeped in trauma, steeped in past, steeped in history, and that don't allow a lot of room for interpretation. So for the example in this one, in the case of Erasure, for example, a story featuring Black characters, which, for example, talk about all their like inherited trauma. They talk about like maybe slavery. They talk about their pain. They talk about, if they're a criminal, right? Like this idea of growing up a certain way, and all of these expectations and these prejudices and stereotypes, and how publishing kind of feeds into, it's a business, so it feeds into trying to buy things they think will sell really well. And often that means that we have marginalized stories which are focused on a very specific type of experience. So we don't see, for example, a lot of sort of like black characters in space, or black characters falling in love in romance stories or in rom-coms. And so that's kind of what a lot of Erasure is about as well. It's about the frustration that has to do with telling a story that you want to tell, but that doesn't fit into people's narrow interpretations of your existence and your marginalized existence, and what story like rings true to you, basically. But knowing that before I went into Erasure, I think that a lot of actually my feelings, or a lot of the story as well of Erasure, are not all about that. It is also about a main character who is working through the death of his sister, is a main character who's working through trying to, or witnessing his mom's mental, like, I'm not sure if she has dementia, I'm not sure if she has Alzheimer's, but her mental state deteriorating in a way that is hard for him. It's hard for him to be the primary caretaker again. So it's also about family and those kind of family dynamics also with his brother. Like, that is a huge part of Erasure, which I never expected based on what was pitched to me. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed seeing this character have all of these other aspects, him also dating and like was such a mood about not wanting to date someone because they don't like a book that you don't like, or they like a book that you don't like, or they don't like a book that you love. That was like such a mood. But anyway, it's a story that is so more multifaceted than what was originally pitched to me. And so those were my initial thoughts based on the book. And some of the things that I'm thinking about based on the adaptation is that we have a lot of passages. I first want to know how much of the like family situation they're going to focus upon, because I saw a trailer earlier today and you don't see any of that in the trailer. None of his family stuff is in the trailer. It is all about the publishing. It's about his book not selling. It's about him writing My Pathology, and it's about that kind of thing. So I'm interested to know how much they're going to talk about his family. And I'm also interested because in Erasure, there's tons of chapters, a whole long section that has chapters from actually his parody book. So that, when I was reading it, I was like, are they going to like act out his book? How closely are they going to stick to that actual portion of the book? So that's also another thing I'm thinking about as well, based on the trailer and also my feelings about Erasure. I'm going to watch the film, and I will record a video of me after the film so that we can all figure out what I thought. Hi everyone, this is me from the future. I finally watched the film adaptation of Erasure, which is actually called American Fiction. And I have some interesting thoughts, or I was interested to watch this because I wasn't sure how some things would translate. I talked about that in the previous section that you just saw, so I won't really talk about that too much. But in general, I kind of loved from the beginning the way that the tone comes across in the movie. So the way that there's this kind of like dryness, I guess, and the interactions, in some of the first scenes, the interactions between the main character and the other the students that he is teaching, and or also his faculty as well, like those first interactions really kind of solidify the tone of the movie for me, and I really appreciated that. But in general, I had some thoughts. So first of all, one of the things I was thinking about is how will they put in the scenes from My Pathology, because that is a good chunk of Erasure is kind of just those scenes, and it was shortened down into basically only one scene where the actors are acting out the book / movie that we're seeing, or maybe no, they're acting out the book, I guess, but it looks like a movie, I guess, because he's kind of like watching it. I liked that, but I felt like the snippet that we're seeing from My Pathology, while it gives you enough to kind of understand what My Pathology will be without a reading or without any other things, I don't think it did justice to kind of the scope of the book, and that makes sense because I think in the book there are 10 chapters of the actual book within a book, whereas here there's only kind of one short scene. So in general, everything that we see is really condensed down, and in some ways it works, in some ways it doesn't. So for that one, I would say it half works. Like, you get the theme, you get the vibes, but you don't necessarily feel as much of the context of that. But for the movie audiences, I think that that works and that comes across okay. But what I really missed in the movie were the kind of exploration of the side character family, in terms of how in Erasure he's kind of going through navigating his father and his father's past as cheating on his mom, and kind of unearthing this and what it does to kind of what he's thinking about his father and everything like that. And I really enjoyed that one, or that aspect in Erasure, which you don't really see in American Fiction. It's kind of briefly touched upon, like, oh, did you also know that dad was like this? And everyone's like, yes, you were his favorite, and so you didn't know, but everyone else knew. And I felt like that was such a small portion of what was going on in American Fiction. And also the side character relationship with the, like, quote unquote love interest. I felt like they took kind of the catchy parts of the conversation, or the catchy parts of that relationship, but I was intrigued to have seen more of that, I guess. And that kind of makes sense, because I feel like when you have a book and then you have a movie, oftentimes I feel like the movies and the adaptations kind of flatten it down a little bit. You know, they take the bits that are super catchy, or they take the bits that like leave impressions in your mind, and those are, you know, it kind of takes the clickbait moments basically out of the book. And so I kind of expected that, and I was missing some of the elements, I guess. But specifically, the ending is not what I thought it would be. I don't really know how to talk about it without spoilers. It is interesting because the ending in the movie feels almost a little bit more meta than Erasure, which was already a bit meta because it was a book within a book and an author writing sort of a parody piece that actually gets really published. Like, already it was a bit meta, it was a bit parody-esque, but the ending of the movie makes it even more, and I really did like that because you get more of a resolution. And I was reading the book and I was like, movie audiences, if they took that ending and left it like it was, would not be happy with it. So in some ways, I kind of expected that this would be a way that they would go in terms of the resolution. There would be more resolution in some aspects, but not all. And I liked it. I don't know if that's just me. I feel like we've been trained, or we've been conditioned, specifically within books and also movies and media narratives, to kind of expect a tidy resolution at the end. You know, you invest whatever hours reading a book, or you invest hours watching a movie, and then you want that feeling of like, oh, okay, everything resolved, or like, okay, everything's okay. And so I had mixed feelings on the ending of Erasure, but in a way that I enjoyed. Like, I enjoyed being challenged to kind of think about, well, like, do all books have to have a resolved ending? Do all books have to have, like, what am I expecting when I read a book? So I enjoyed that. And I do think that it takes a little bit of the introspective sort of breath in right before the exhale. It takes a little bit of that away and gives audiences more of an exhale in a way that I think is better for audiences. Like, it's what we expect. But I did appreciate being challenged from Erasure. So those are my thoughts about the adaptation. In general, I did find a lot of things interesting about it, and it was a movie that I understand now why it was recommended to me. So please let me know down below if you have watched American Fiction, or if you've read Erasure, and let me know what your thoughts are. I'm sorry that this took so long to do. Like, I think basically almost a year it took me to do this, but I don't know what to tell you. I've already started and finished, and I'm about to film my next adaptation thoughts, or book to adaptation, in this case, book to TV series. So that one is coming out sooner, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your reading day, week, month, and 2025 year, and I will see you later.